Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MyFootballWriter podcast, whether you are listening to us on Spotify or watching our beautiful faces on YouTube. We are back with another podcast under Jack Willshere's Yellow Army after a 0-0 draw with Middlesbrough and a lot of contract turmoil that's been released today. I am joined by a guest this evening, none other than Matthew Saunders. Who is newly writing for MyFootballWriter. Matthew, why don't you just quickly introduce yourself and let the MFW faithful know what they should expect from you?
Well, thank you, Jack. Hello, everyone. My name's Matthew Saunders. Like Jack said, I am new on MyFootballWriter. I've done a year writing for a online sort of sports magazine called Favel.com about Leicester City, where I'm currently studying. I am a Norwich fan. Don't worry, the shirt says it all. Don't worry. But I'm at university studying journalism, and what I like to think I write about is it's sort of in more in-depth articles that look. So I've got, for an example, I've got one currently should be released tomorrow when we're recording this, but this will probably be released by the time this is out, about some of the new candidates for the Norwich job, and just taking the sort of more in-depth look about, their styles of play, how likely they are to get the role, etc. And I really like doing pieces like that, so I think there'll be a lot more pieces like that, and on I think a fortnightly basis.
Sounds good. Well, here we much prefer canaries to foxes. But obviously alongside Matthew, we have our dear friend Henry Miller. Henry Miller, you weren't feeling very well early in the week. Are you feeling much better now?
I wouldn't say much better. I'm still not 100%, but yeah, this is the best I've felt in days. So got to keep on powering through.
Good. Man flu affects us all. It's a very inhibiting disease, but pray that you recover very quickly. But before we delve into all of the stuff from Middlesbrough and all the contract news that I'm sure you've all heard, just a quick word from, of course, our wonderful sponsors, the Fat Cat and Canary, the finest Fat Cat themed pub in Norwich, of which I think there's at least 2 or 3. It's definitely my favourite, and you should definitely go and visit before the Cardiff game, after the Cardiff game, and for the first game of next season, if that's managed under Jack Willshire or David Wagner again. I don't have any sources. I don't know that David's coming back. I don't think so. But yes, the Fat Cat and Canary, thank you, of course, for being our wonderful, fantastic sponsors this season. It is, of course, much appreciated. Anyway, back on to the reason why we are all here. As discussed, Jack Willshire has taken the reins for 2 matches on an interim basis until the end of the season. In case you didn't hear, Johannes Hoftorp was sacked. Yes, that did happen. I know, unless you've been living under a rock, I'm really sorry for spoiling the news. Obviously, the Riverside is a very tough stadium to go to. Earlier in the season, it was a thrilling 3-3 draw. This time it was quite a bland 0-0. But really, all things considered, it was quite a positive one. There was a lot more kind of impetus from the players. Obviously, a clean sheet away from home is, it's fantastic under any circumstances. And even Middlesbrough were still arguably in the playoff hunt. So really, it's got to be arguably a good point. Henry, Matt, I mean, what were your thoughts on the kind of performance generally? And do you kind of think that, it's kind of an indication of how much the players sort of took off the shackles, so to speak? Do you think they played with a little bit more freedom? Do you think it is a bit of a bad indictment on Torup, or do you just think, it was just a pretty standard 0-0? Oh, Henry, you're muted.
Better unmute.
I'll go ahead.
Better unmute. I think it was a good performance on the whole to go to a playoff chasing Middlesbrough side and to get a 0-0 draw and to largely be considered the better side as well. I think was a really good performance. However, as you said there, Jack, the players were playing with far more confidence, which either shows one or two things. Either the club were right to sack Giannis Torup and he wasn't up for the job, or that the players just simply weren't playing for him. I personally believe the latter. I think he'd got to that stage where there were some players in the dressing room who probably didn't play for him. And I think maybe the response on all the players' social channels to his departure is probably a little bit telling. So, it's nice to see Norwich play like that, play with that freedom, but you just wonder where it's been the last 3 or 4 months or so.
I fully agree with Henry there, because I was at that Millwall game and just there was nothing for the fans to get behind. Just awful. But in Middlesbrough, where we've been known to sort of struggle a lot more, I mean, I'm thinking, was it last season or the season before we lost 5-1 there? It's never
a thing. Yeah,
we've never really been a good side to go to the Riverside. But to come away with the point, I'm definitely more than happy with an interim coach. And like Henry said, there was 100% an issue with the players, because that turnaround doesn't happen in a week where they go from looking like how they did at Millwall, where they looked like no hopers, like not even a team in the 92, to all of a sudden them playing with more confidence, being more of a team than we've seen in the last few months, and really just doing something to get the fans even slightly back on and to make them go, "Ooh, this is a lot better."
Yeah, and obviously, all the fans who travelled up from East Anglia to the northeast had a much better afternoon than some other fans who travelled from East Anglia to the northeast. I'm saying nothing. This is where I put a pin in that conversation. Premier League's tough, isn't it? Real tough, especially if you spend 150 million. That's my piece. I'm done. I've got nothing else to say. I don't think we're in a good position to be laughing at people getting relegated. But Ben Godfrey laughing at the point of a certain team getting relegated, that was quite funny. Anyway, Middlesbrough, yes, no, definitely a game that you could have seen Norwich winning if one chance had gone their way. Obviously, signs looked a little bit more sparky, like the signs that we've seen before. But yeah, obviously, all the stats in terms of more kind of tackles. We looked more up for it, but at the end of the day, it's a 0-0 draw at the point of the season where nothing particularly matters. I guess it's one of those where it's pride for someone like Angus Gunn, who of course got a clean sheet and was arguably man of the match. But today, as announced earlier, as we kind of all anticipated, he will be leaving the club at the end of the season. His contract will not be renewed, alongside Jakob Sorensen and Henry. I can see you holding back the tears. Our dearly beloved Onel Hernandez, his deal will not be renewed at the club either. As well, Jonathan Tompkinson and Archie Mayer will be released as well. So yeah, that's, what is it, 5 senior players who won't be here next season. Obviously, there's 2 players in that mix that many fans would probably be happy with not receiving a new deal. I think the sucker punch is perhaps Angus. Do you guys think that these moves are good decisions by the club, or do you think within that mix, 1 or 2 of those players should have been given a new deal?
I think with Angus, it's difficult. Personally, I would have been all for us getting rid of Angus this season. I think this season has been his worst season in a Norwich shirt. And for him, if he wants to kick on and become that established high-end championship, low-end Premier League goalkeeper, he does need to leave Norwich, and I think he knows that. So I wouldn't be opposed with us getting rid of Angus, but we could have got money for him. So I think that's the bit of a kick in the teeth. I think if he turned around and signed a new 1-year deal and then we sold him to, say, Leicester, for example, in the summer, I think I think no one would complain with that, because we'd have got money for him, and he's a Norfolk boy as well. So the fact that we're then selling him on, I think would be quite a good deal. The fact that we've lost him for free, though, that one is a bit of a kick in the teeth. But look, no, the other 2, I've said some very critical words about Onel Hernandez on this podcast, but he has been a really good servant for Norwich. But I think he should have gone the summer that Pukki left. To be honest, he probably did outstay his welcome by a couple of seasons or so. But yeah, it in a way it's sad to see him go as well, just because of what Norwich City meant to him. And then Sorenson as well. He's been given a really bad stick, I think, by Norwich City fans this season. Yes, he's been poor, but I think the whole team has been poor. And his whole Norwich career basically has been the person who fills in whenever there's injuries, whether that's at left back, defensive midfield, even centre back. So the shift he's put in for Norwich, I think he's done a good job since he came to the club during that COVID season. So mainly it's Gunn, which is the kick in the teeth, but not because he's going, but just because we haven't got any money for him. I think in terms of goalkeeper, there probably will be goalkeepers out there who are affordable, who are decent at championship level. We just need basically need someone who comes in and just hits the ground running, because no disrespect to George Long or Vicente Reyes. Reyes has shown that he's not ready, and George Long is George Long for to keep it mild, so to speak. But yeah, we need a number 1, but hopefully, I reckon there are affordable options out there. And but fair play to all 3 of them. And yeah, it is sad to see them go, whether it is the right decision or not.
Yeah, I think Angus is a kicker, because I think I can understand why we're not renewing the contract, but I would love to see him, even if he's a second choice keeper. I think that would have been perfect for him. But someone like Angus isn't going to want to be second fiddle at, I think, any club, unless it's one of the big Premier League clubs, which I think, being honest, as much as we would love to see him there, he's not going to get there. Unless Man United or Tottenham are, are looking, which now I say it out loud, actually. But, yeah, I wouldn't want to play sort of second fiddle to anyone, and I do understand that, and that sort of does hurt a bit to watch him go, because he has been, especially like last season, he was outstanding, and he's been fairly good this season. He's just been a bit plagued with injuries, as with the whole squad. So he has been, a little hard done by, but he's still put in a good shift at the end of the season. So, I can't sit there and say, I can't sort of sit there and say I wholeheartedly want him to new contract, but at the same time, I'm sort of like, yeah, but I want him to stay, and he could be a second choice, but like I previously mentioned, he wouldn't want to do that. Onel as well. I'm really sad to see Onel go. I know he's not been sort of as clinical or has got many assists or goals or whatever as people want him to, and I understand that point of view. But at the same time, I don't think there's no one in this squad especially, but even for like the past few seasons, I don't think there's a player in the team that I could say sort of define Norwich City more than Onel Hernandez. He with the club crest on his tattooed on him, and he's one of those players that whether he gets subbed on or whether he's starting, he will always give 100%. And that's part of the reason why so many people love him, even when he hasn't been getting as many goals and assists or whatever, is because he does care for this club. And I am really sad to see him go, because I think, even if he's sort of done, what we brought Ashley Barnes in to do, and sort of, yes, okay, it was nice to have him as, an option, but as well, he brings a lot in for what we don't see in the dressing room. And I think that I would love to have someone like Onel there to do that, especially considering now I sort of look in that dressing room and sort of, apart from maybe McLean and maybe Duffy, I don't really see anyone that carries that sort of love for Norwich City. So it's sad to see him go. I would have liked to see him retire here.
And what you were saying there, Matthew, I will just pick up. I think everything you've said about Onel is valid, but in terms of what we've seen from him on social media, I think that sort of damaged his reputation, especially this season, rather than hindered it. If you're a young player going into that dressing room for the first time, you're mainly looking at players like Kenny McLean as to how to be a model pro, and you're going to him for advice and everything. And like you said there as well, Shane Duffy as well. Yes, he's not had the greatest of seasons, but you're going to him if you're a young defender and you're picking his brains. Because of how infamous Onel's social media antics have become, would you say he's lost that sort of credibility, so to speak, amongst Norwich fans?
I think he might have lost it maybe a bit. Maybe people sort of went, maybe it's not as trustworthy, or maybe not believable in a way, but maybe it's sort of, he needed to be stricted up, a bit stricter with what he, goes around doing and saying on social media. But I think ultimately, when, if you look at what has happened this season, I feel as though it's like a drop of water in a river. It just sort of, one little thing compared to all the good seasons that he's given us, where he's shown that he has cared about the club. So I do think you've got a point there, Henry. But for me personally, I feel like it's very much a case of, one sort of mistake isn't going to really, really damage his credibility, his reputation here at Norwich. And I sort of do get what you're saying with the younger players as well, and I do agree with you. But I think if he made a mistake, and I think it's the first sort of one that I can remember him making of really any sort of magnitude. Maybe I've forgotten maybe one or two things, but it's the only thing that I can sort of think of about any controversies with Onel. But yeah, I do get your point.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go on.
I was just going to finish off with Sorenson, because I think, like Henry said, I fully agree with him. He's been sort of, I think, hounded a bit by our fans this season, because I think he's always been a fairly, maybe not like a fairly solid sort of defensive midfielder, but he's always sort of come on, done the job. He's sort of been the scapegoat for when we play bad or when we lose a game or whatever. And I do feel like it's unfair to him. I don't think he's as bad as many of our fans make him out to be. I think at times he's been a bit what's the word? He's been a bit out of his depth at times, and I do sort of understand that. But there have been times this season. I mean, I can't remember. I think it was against Bristol City where he filled in at centre back, and he just looked really natural. And I was sort of sitting there thinking, why can't we do this more often? I think I like it. But it is sort of one of those things where I'm not sort of too sad that he's gone, but at the same time, I think the reasons why he's gone, and especially with sort of the fan reaction to him being a big part, I do sort of feel a bit sorry for him.
Yeah, and I think for Onel and Lungi especially, those are two players that have been in title-winning seasons for Norwich, and you cannot ignore that at all. I mean, when Lungi first came in and was having to slot in at left back, I remember it was that game away at Brentford. It was, I think, his first appearance for Norwich, and it was just like, right, I know you're a defensive midfield, but how about fullback? And again, he was pretty solid through that season. Obviously, the Premier League was probably a step too far for him. And again, has really struggled with injuries, but has been, trusted by, what is it now, 3 or 4 different coaches. In terms of Onel, my favourite phase of Onel was Argos Onel. Argos Onel was like the peak. That was his best form. His worst form is definitely controversial TikTok Onel. It's kind of been a lot of kind of peaks and troughs. There was obviously like tattoo and cigar Onel. Considering I don't know how many games he actually played in that season. Was that when we loaned him out? I can't even remember. He's been here for too long. But yeah, what is it now? It's over 200 appearances for Norwich and 15 goals. Even as a professional footballer who plays as a forward, you've kind of got to look at that and think, those numbers. I don't even know what that is. Goal per game. I cannot do the maths off the top of my head. But that's not numbers that kind of match what a forward who if it's going to be in a Norwich team that we want to push forward and we want to go up and we want to do fantastic, amazing things, that type of goal output isn't conducive to that. But again,
I think you're spot on there, Jack. I really do. I think those numbers just don't correlate. And as you said, if Norwich want to push up the table, they really need better. And what brings me joy is that next season we're not going to get to November and have the ridiculous argument as to whether Onel Hernandez should be starting championship games in 2025. And I know he's gone, but that calls for this. That does call for that, because that was such a ridiculous argument this season that he should be starting games at championship level in 2025 with output like that. So I'm glad that we don't have to talk about that anymore.
Yeah. But again, it'll be interesting to see, where he goes. If another championship team will snap him up,
what he'll do. I was thinking about this actually. He'll be rubbing his hands together, looking at who's come up. Who was like TikTok Hollywood money. He'll do a Peter Odom wingy. He'll drive down to the racecourse ground and knock on the door. Rob and Ryan will come out and go, "Oh no, what are you doing here, mate? We don't want you. Like, we haven't come in for you." And then he'll end up going to Oxford.
I mean, that's not a bad attacking wide, Onel and Poeta. Fullbacks beware. Goalkeepers, you'll be fine. Obviously, Hernandez for those moments, for the goal against, who, that won't be forgotten. I always say, only legends and Lewis Grabban have scored against them lot, and I think he's in that category. Obviously, yes, he's got a Norwich tattoo, but so does James Maddison. Doesn't mean that you give him an extra year's contract. Just a word on Angus as well. I do agree with you, Henry, and I think had he had a fantastic, wonderful, amazing season, statistically and both in terms of general performances, we'd be looking at this and thinking, what on earth is going on? But I think generally he had a poor Euros with Scotland. Maybe that, boggled his head a little bit. I don't know. But again, he's gone from one of the best shot stoppers in the division statistically to one of the worst. And it's been rumoured pretty much all season. There's not really been any murmurs about a new deal being on the table. It's always kind of been off the table. Yes, he's Norfolk born and went to school in Framingham Earl or whatever. He's got to leave Norwich at some point. Did you want him to stay in goal until he was 45? He'll be fine. We will meet again, probably. When he signs, probably for Leeds. I feel like Leeds is probably the best kind of situation for him. Obviously, Matthew, you said like an understudy in a Premier League team. They're probably going to get rid of Meslier, put Gunn as number 2, and then sign someone actually good in goal. And I feel that Farke rates him, Farke likes him, and well, I don't know if it's going to happen. He might go absolutely anywhere. He might go to Saudi Arabia for all we know, or he might go to his homeland of Scotland and sign for Rangers or something and compete with Jack Butland. Homeland. Not not Norfolk. Maybe he'll sign for Akel. That would be a real coup.
Dereham Town.
Dereham Town. Are you a big Dereham Town boy?
I went to sixth form in Dereham. That's about my only affiliation with them.
Okay, big up Dereham.
And we could have Angus Gunn and Grant Holt in the same team.
Oh, now hold on a minute.
Henry, you're teasing me. That would be dreamy. On the subject of contracts, obviously everyone was talking about who hasn't been offered contracts. There wasn't confirmation that Emmy Marcondes is going to be released at the end of the season. Now, obviously, it might be ever so slightly delayed, or he might be in contract negotiations. Throughout most of this season, we've said he's been a breath of fresh air and a really revitalized kind of free transfer under Johannes Hoftorp. His type of player, obviously, from experience in the Danish league, experience in England as well. At the age of 29, when Ben Napper seemingly wants to decrease the age profile of the squad, if you saw Emmy being given an extra 1-year deal, would you be that upset, or would you kind of much rather that we save some of our wage budget, for getting a better goalkeeper or something like that?
Well, to start off, I think he has an option in his contract anyway, so it was always a possibility. And I think his performances this season, he has deserved it. He has deserved to get a new deal. As you said, when he first joined the club, we thought he was a revelation. We thought he was a real breath of fresh air. And his goals have really helped Norwich to be within touch and distance of the playoffs in the first half of the season. So I think, for him, I am pleased to see him sign a 1-year deal, which I believe he will do. I think he will be a Norwich player next season. The only thing I will say about that is he was the quintessential Johannes Hoftorp player. JHT got the best out of him. He was JHT's man in terms of being brought to the club and JHT showing faith in him. So the fact that he's no longer in charge, will it be interesting to see what next season holds for Emmy Marcondes and whether he'll get the game time he desires? Nick Mashiter was speaking on the scrimmage, and he said that Ben Napper's really looking for players 24 years old or younger. So that's the age profile he wants. And to give a 29-year-old a 1-year deal, that doesn't suit the overall strategy that maybe Ben Napper's going for. But this season, he does deserve it. So I am pleased for him. I think it is the right decision, but it will just be interesting to see his output, what his output will be like next season, because he got to where he was this season, I truly believe, because of Johannes Hoff-Torp. So the fact that that partnership and that relationship has now broken off, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him going forward.
Yeah, I do agree. I think Emmy's, one of those players where it doesn't really matter who's at the helm. He's sort of one of those players that you like to have at your club no matter what. Just even if it's just for his experience. Obviously, he was at Bournemouth before when they got promoted, and I think he played a few seasons with them in the Premier League as well. So there's some good experience there of not only Championship football, but with Premier League football as well, which I know we're still a long way off from. But even if it's just getting some of the boys ready for when that step is taken. But he sort of. I know there was a discussion about him being sort of 30 years old, and Napa wanting to sign young players. But I feel like, with Emmy, it doesn't. We can see his class, and even in this sort of poor spell of games, even at like Millwall, you can still see that there is still a player that there. Okay, he's in bad form, I admit, but there is still a player there that is already can do it in this league, and there's even at the start of the season, it was we found the next greatest thing on a free. We thought we sort of found the next Timu Pukki in a way, maybe a bit too high of a bar, but you get the sort of the general gist of what I'm trying to say. But I'm happy that Emmy was seemingly getting a new contract, and I think he'd be happy to stay. I can't see many other clubs sort of around Championship, Prem level, maybe even League One level going for him. I mean, maybe that's a bit harsh. I can probably see a few League One teams go for him, but like in sort of the Championship and the Premier League, I can't really see another team going for him. So I think that's more of an inclination for him to stay. And then, even if it's a 1-year contract offered to him, we'll see how it goes through next year. I think it should go fine. And I think we'll just sort of see it as how is he on a year-to-year basis rather than go, okay, he's going to be in our plans for the next 3 years or he's not going to be in our plans at all. And just sort of take it like that, really.
Yeah, again, he's not going to be a crucial cog in the master plan long term. Again, who would want to sign someone who's that old, that ancient at 29? It really upsets me. It really upsets me greatly. But glad to know that Ben Napa exclusively wants to sign players born after 2001. Players who were as old as the film Monsters, Inc. I'm not even going to ask you how old you are, Matthew, because the mere look at you is upsetting me. Don't tell me. But yeah, in terms of Marcondes, I think it's a kind of similar enigma to Schwartau in the sense of, to me, they feel like a traditional number 10. And Torup very much did not like a number 10. He very much liked his flat 4-3-3. 4-3-3, yes, 4-3-3. Again, lots of people have said go back to 4-2-3-1. That's what worked under Daniel Farker. You have two holders, and then you have a little guy in the hole. You have a Madison or a Stiepermann. Go back to that. Again, whoever the new coach may be, maybe that'll be one where next season Marcondes starts in a number 10, Schwartau gains a bit more confidence and then inherits that position. But the idea of Emmy Marcondes being a squad player, I don't mind that much. I think if he'd have kept up his levels, he probably would have been in the conversation for player of the season. Alas, yeah, probably not, in anyone's really top 3. But speaking about potentially new managers and new styles, we have one game left of this awful, miserable, terrible, god-awful season. And it is, of course, the bottom team in the Championship, travelling all the way from South Wales to Norfolk. It is Cardiff City, and it is what many people think to be Jack Willshere's audition for the head coach role. Now, many people have said that Jack Willshire was essentially brought in to eventually inherit Torrup. Maybe Napper's big master plan was to have Willshire at the helm long term. Do you think that if he gets a win against Cardiff in a game that means nothing to them, that means nothing to us, do you think that it is, a successful audition and warrants him getting the job enough? Or do you think that we still need to look at bigger, better, other alternatives?
So I think with not just Willshire, but the whole managerial situation as a whole, I think it's a really complex one. I think, is it a dress rehearsal for Jack Willshire? No, I don't think it is. We could lose to Cardiff, and that is completely plausible, by the way. And he still gets the job. So yeah, it's really difficult because there are pros and cons to each side of the argument. What I will say about Willshire is the performance level against Middlesbrough did seem to up with the current squad of players. And as you alluded to there, Jack, there's no doubt that Ben Napper brought in Jack Willshire to eventually groom him into the role of first team manager. So the fact that that's sort of been fast tracked now, I guess. Jack Willshire, he said in the press that he's feels he's more than up to the occasion, and he wants to continue managing at this level. So I don't think Saturday's result really matters that much. What I will say about Jack Willshire is this season has been labelled a transitional season. I know it's got to a point now where that's a really cliched term in the Norwich City fandom, so to speak. But if we're still on the same journey and same process that we first were on when Ben Napper came to the club and when he appointed Johannes Hoftorp, he has to appoint Jack Willshire as the manager, because it feels like that continual succession. He brought Willshire in under Torrup. He's learned under Torrup, under Glenn Riddlesholm. He's he's sort of learned his craft there. He knows the players, and then he's built himself up to the first team manager's role. So, yeah, I feel like if Ben Napper doesn't want to come out and say that, yeah, I screwed up appointing Johannes Hoftorp, and he does think that we're still on this journey, so to speak, and the same journey that was first implemented when he came to the club, I feel like Willshire is the only option. If he goes for someone else, even a Russell Martin, then you're basically saying that strategy of backing the manager, signing young players or whatever didn't work, because Russell Martin, yes, he's had experience of getting teams out of this division with Southampton, but it will feel different to the JHT era, whereas because Jack Willshire was already integrated under that, I don't think it will be. I think that will feel like a natural sort of succession, so to speak. But going back to what I was saying about Cardiff winning the game, it's by far a possibility. Our last two seasons at Championship level, we've played a relegated side on the final day of the season and lost both of them. We lost to Blackpool in the 22-23 season, and then last season, albeit, yes, that unlike Blackpool, Birmingham weren't relegated when we kicked off against them, but we did play Birmingham, who were fighting for their lives. They beat us, and they still went down. So Norwich do have a track record of losing to already relegated teams in this stage of the season.
I was going to sort of come in and say I don't think it's the audition for Willshire, and I don't really think it matters about the Cardiff game, because I think, we'll have different candidates already lined up. But whilst sort of Henry was speaking there, I sort of had another think about it. I thought, maybe, I don't think it will be like an audition as per se, where if we win, he'll shoot up the shortlist or whatever. But I think, I mean, I don't know when sort of teams after the season stop training to go on their break or whatever, but I feel like we'll go definitely for a few more weeks after the season's finished, and just to see if there is any proof with the Willshire way, if we want to call it so. But I think, because Willshire has been known with his Arsenal under-18s to play a sort of similar style to what Torp was playing, albeit in a slightly different way. He did like a 4-3-3 as well. But I still do think that there's different managers with more likeliness of getting the job. I think Russell Martin still does. I even think Gary O'Neill might have more of a chance than someone like Willshire of getting the role. I know there's sort of two former Norwich players. How enticing that is to come back to a club that you once played at, I'm not sure. But I think there's definitely some value in that. But I do sort of understand if, at some point in pre-season, there was to be a statement saying, okay, we're going to promote Willshire to first team manager and we're going to do it like that, I would really understand it. Why? Because I think that there is definitely something with Willshire that maybe Johannes didn't have. I don't know. I'd have to see more games as interim manager, and maybe this Cardiff game would sort of show me more. But
and what I will say,
right?
Sorry.
No, go for it.
Yeah, what I will say, there's as much of a possibility that Norwich lose to Cardiff and Willshire gets the job on a full-time basis than Norwich beat Cardiff and Willshire doesn't get the job. I don't think the game matters for him. I think if Napa was to appoint him as the manager, then he'd already have an inkling, first of all, that he's going to do that. And second of all, I think how he is probably around the players on the training pitch and maybe the way he sets up will be the deciding factor as to whether he gets the job, not what the outcome of the game is.
Yeah, and I think he's... Oh, sorry, I was just going to say that I think Napa is going to be under an immense amount of pressure if he does give it to Willshire and the form remains poor. It's all very well, giving it to a mate that you think might be, an up-and-coming coach. But clearly, regardless of, project or progression or anything like that, form is most important. And that is clearly, the deciding factor as to why Torp isn't here. Otherwise, we would be talking about how he would rebuild in the summer. I think Napa does need to come out after the season's done and have a bit of a debrief, like you say, Henry. I think we do need a bit of clarity as to what's going on. But yeah, I think there's lots of conversations about who it might be, and most of the candidates our fans seem to be turning our nose up at, which I find really funny. Like, oh, Marty Cifuentes, oh no, we don't want him. Like, oh, Gary O'Neill, oh, we definitely don't want him. Oh God, it's like, what kind of club do you think we are? Do you think we're like Real Madrid or something? Do you like there was this Swiss manager, I've forgotten his name, Raphael Wiki, is it? I think he's won
like
the Swiss league or something, but he's been out of work for some time. Oh no, we don't want him. It's like, come on, like, think of it like players. It's like, oh no, I don't want to sign Ashley Barnes. I want to go and sign Cristiano Ronaldo because he can score goals. No, you just gotta have there's levels to this game, and I'm sure if you looked back at the manager of, I think the club is called Cambuur, which is a Dutch team from 2017. I'm sure if you looked at their manager in 2017 and looked at his win ratio, you might think, it's okay for that level, but probably we shouldn't look to appoint him. That guy that I'm talking about is Arne Slot, who then went on to obviously win a Premier League with Liverpool. So it just proves that, managers can, develop from completely out of nowhere, and perhaps turning your nose up at someone who, has seemingly not done amazingly at a certain level. Yeah, I think we just need to have a bit of perspective with that generally. But again, if Willshire, instills a style of play that matches what we like, switches up the formation and actually gets the players properly playing consistently, then I'm all there for it. Because you've got to remember, Torup managed that. He did get the players, performing to a high level. We're still one of the highest scorers in the division. Let's not forget that. We've obviously got 2 players in the championship team of the season. So, yeah, it was just lack of consistency and not being able to keep it going. So, obviously, the Cardiff game, like Henry says, it is a bit of a banana skin. I literally cannot remember the last time we won on the final day. Someone will have to correct me on this. It goes really far back. I just have memories of being thrashed by Spurs and then being thrashed by Arsenal and again being humiliated. I mostly tend to block out the final day. Don't even mention Fulham 6-0, which Matthew probably wasn't born then.
What year was that? Was that 06?
That was 06, yes.
I was alive by then.
Okay. It's not promising. Moving on from Jack Willshire and the men's team, Henry Miller, we're coming to you for a quickfire women's update because Norwich City women didn't quite win the league, did they? They fell short as they did last season. I know you're probably going to write some fantastic content about this season and how it's gone. What are your initial thoughts on how the season's gone? Obviously, they just played a 3-0 win at Carrow Road against QPR. So that was a good experience for any of the fans who went. A winning run at the end of the season, but perhaps that little spell in autumn was what sort of did it for them.
Yeah, you're spot on. It was that spell from September through to December that really put the nail in the coffin for Norwich's promotion hopes. In 2025, they've been unbeaten in the league. And they've really pushed Real Bedford down to the wire. So Real Bedford did a Norwich of last season, so to speak, and suffered their first league defeat of the season. On the final day of the season, they lost to Dulwich Hamlet, which meant that, yes, they still go up, but they didn't have an unbeaten season. But look, Norwich finished 2 points behind them and really, again, will be the standout team in the division next season. Couldn't do it last season, had AFC Wimbledon who blew everyone away. And then this season it was a lot tighter, but still couldn't get over the line. And next season, hopefully, they'd have learned from their mistakes that they made in the autumn and winter time and really kick on and deliver promotion to the 3rd tier, because that was Andy Cook's number 1 goal. It was written in his contract to deliver promotion to the 3rd tier. And ultimately, he's not done that. So will he be under pressure next season? Yes, I think he will. I think if we have similar form to what we showed this season, next season, whether he'll still be in post is questionable, because we simply cannot afford to slip up. But no, I think overall he is a good manager. His pedigree speaks for himself. Norwich have finished the season very strongly, and I do think this time next year we can be celebrating promotion and get into step 3. But yeah, what I will say as well, it was a really good game at Carrow Road. It was nice to that the women got to play at Carrow Road again. I think it was the 2nd or 3rd time they've played there this season. And of course, next weekend they're back at Carrow Road in the Norfolk Senior Cup final. But it's the first time that the County Cup final, that there have been 3 games in one day. So there's the youth team final, the men's youth, I think it's under 18s final. Then you've got the Norfolk Senior Cup final, and then you've got the Women's County Cup final. So, 3 games in one day at Carrow Road. By the time Norwich City women graced the pitch, it might have taken a little bit of a beating, but that shouldn't matter. They're overwhelming favourites against Mulbarton, and hopefully, despite the disappointment of the season, they can still finish by retaining the County Cup.
Yeah, you said it there. Sadly, another disappointing season, much like the men's. But yeah, again, lots of pressure for next season. Obviously, if any of you would like to read more about the women's team, go to MyFootballWriter. The links are in the description. Henry writes lots of fantastic content about our fantastic women's team. I'm sure he will continue to do so into next season. And if you've got this far and you've liked the video, obviously, please do subscribe and like and comment and all that wonderful stuff. But we're getting to the final stages of the pod. Of course, we get to the fun bit. Matthew has explained it is time for Quickfire Hot Takes. I will give you 5 questions and I want quickfire responses. They're not serious. And I don't know, Henry, if you want to answer first and then Matthew. I don't care what order you do it in. And again, if you're listening at home, do follow along. If you're watching on YouTube, what would your answers be to these quickfire hot takes? Put them in the comments. We will look out for them. We obviously spoke about this quite controversially as a quickfire hot take a few weeks ago. Who would we like to see replace Johannes Hoftorp? And people got very angry with us. Now he's gone. I'm going to ask it again. Genuinely, who is your ideal Johannes Hoftorp replacement? Go.
My ideal replacement is Steve Cooper. I know that's quite unconventional, but for me, I think he'd be the one to deliver promotion. But if Napa is definitely still on the same wavelength as he was when he first came to the club, then Jack Willshire.
For me, Russell Martin. I think I liked his style of play at Southampton. I've liked it, even at MK Dons, Swansea. I know he didn't have the best of times in the Premier League, but I feel like it's, he's a well-established Championship manager by now, and I think he's someone that can really help us get back, even if just into those playoff and promotion spots, and help us fight for that again.
Sean Dyche, with Roy Hodgson as his assistant, would get the job done, frankly. In serious...
What about Neil Warnock joining him? Where would he fit in?
He would go nowhere near my football club, don't be daft. In seriousness, I genuinely don't know because, again, every manager at our level has their flaws. Gary O'Neill seems like a safe-ish bet, but is also quite boring. Again, Steve Cooper completely doesn't play the right style of football, but seems to be underrated and quite effective. And then any other managers are probably too good for us. I'm going to pull a rabbit randomly out of a hat. I say we go for Ralph Hasenhüttl. Why not? I feel like he's a very Norwich manager. I have no idea how he hasn't managed us before. Get Alan Irvine in as assistant. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. Right. Second question. What is the least you've celebrated a Norwich goal? What is the time where it's gone to the back of the net and you've just been like, yeah, cool, whatever?
Oh, I think it was the 16-17 season. It was either against QPR or Sheffield Wednesday. I think it was against QPR, actually. We were 2-0 down. Martin Olsen gave away a penalty within the first 50 seconds, I think it was. And 2-0 down. Stephen Naismith scores to make it 2-1, but we knew we were going to lose. And it was just like, cool, whatever, nice one. So I think that's probably up there. Or in the Premier League, Aston Villa 5, Norwich City 1, Josip Dermich scoring the ultimate consolation goal.
I need to remember if I've remembered this right, because I'm not sure if I can remember the scoreline of this correctly. Because if I remember, there was a 4-1 loss against Brentford in the Premier League at some point. Yeah, 3-1 loss to Brentford.
Was that
And
Ivan Toney's hat
scored?
trick?
Yeah, and that was Pookie scoring in the 90th minute. But we, at that point, we knew he'd lost. It was nice to see Pookie score, but we didn't really celebrate because there's not really much point, is there?
That was another one I can remember as well. In Daniel Farke's first season, Dean Smith tore us apart when his Brentford side came to Carrow Road. And I think Nelson Oliveira scored a last-minute penalty, and it was just like, cool, we've lost the game anyway. Like, it doesn't really matter. So chuck that one into the mix as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few. I mean, obviously, I was at Millwall, and Shane Duffy's header. Freddie and I and Henry, we had a little jump, but like it was mostly sarcasm. I felt nothing. I didn't feel like it was the road to recovery. It felt like, what on earth? Where has that come from? I'm gonna throw in a very niche one. I didn't celebrate Vrancic's free kick against Sheffield Wednesday, one of the most momentous, celebratory, loudest goals we've ever scored, mostly because I was so angry at the fact that we'd only managed to get a point against them because Stephen Fletcher had handled it over the line and we'd been played, we're playing pretty terribly. I was just quite angry. I was excited, but I was just like, I just sort of silently watching it, a bit kind of numb to it, because again, it was sort of fart ball and it was understandable. Maybe that's weird, but yeah, either that one or Duffy against Millwall. Who should win Player of the Season? But who do you think will win Player of the Season?
Mine are exactly the same. Josh Sargent should win Player of the Season, and Josh Sargent, I think, will win Player of the Season.
I think Josh Sargent should win it, and I think more than likely he will, although I do have a sort of sneaking suspicion that they'll give it to Borja Sainz instead.
Yeah, I'll get to that. Maybe there's a quickfire hot take about that as well. Who knows? You'll find out very soon. I kind of weirdly hope that they give it to Kellen Fisher because I think he has had a really solid season. It's probably been our most improved player, but we don't have an award for most improved. Again, I voted for Josh Sargent, so I think it will go to Josh Sargent. Again, who was how many players have lifted the Barry Butler and then left the next season? I'm sure it's like 90% of them. Do you think Sarge and Sainz deserve to be in the Championship Team of the Season?
Yes, I think undoubtedly. I think the form that Josh Sargent has had, despite the fact he missed over a quarter of the season, is nothing short of amazing. So, yes, absolutely, Sargent deserves to be in there. And Borja Sainz, whilst he struggled in the second half of the season, and he's had controversial moments like spitting in the Sunderland game, I think his goal record and how lethal he was in that first part of the season has sort of stuck with him throughout the entirety of the season with him, realistically. And yeah, I think he's there for a reason. Yes, he hasn't put the numbers in recently, but there is no denying that he has had a great season.
Yeah, I think they both have for sort of the same reasons that Henry said, really. Josh Sargent has had an amazing season, even with the injuries, great goal contributions, and fairly consistent all throughout the season. Borja, I think with the start he had, you can't really say no. And, poor performances recently, yes, I admit. But that start of the season, you don't just do that on a fluke. You do that by being good and being the best player in the league at that time. So I do think that he does deserve to be in there.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a bit of Norwich bias in terms of signs. Obviously, you look at the goal tally and you maybe look at it over the whole of the season, then Signs deserves to be there. I'm trying to think of another Championship winger who would arguably be better. I just tend to think of the Leeds wingers because obviously James was in the team of the season, but someone like a Nonto or Manor Solomon could have been in there. Whatever happened to Ben Doak at Middlesbrough?
I was just about to say Ben Doak when Middlesbrough came to Carrow Road, and one of the only games I did go to this season, I thought he was the best player of the pitch. He tore us apart that game.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened to him. But again, obviously Leeds bias. If Pirro goes on to lift the Golden Boot, which he probably is going to do, and he didn't get in the team of the season, that does feel like a little bit of a cheat. So I'm going to say both. No, but what I will say is Gustavo Harmer winning Player of the Season. No, that should have gone to James Trafford, hands down. In my opinion, I think that's utter woke nonsense. Yes, we're getting right to the end now. Absolutely non-serious question at all. Because all the players are on the beach, what is the nicest beach you've ever visited? I've got nothing.
No. I went to Mallorca when I was young. They had quite a nice beach, I think. So probably go for that. That was really hot weather, really nice. So yeah, probably Mallorca.
My experience of beaches is Hemsby or Wales, so riveting choices there. For me personally, probably, we'll go Wales. Why not?
Wales next to the sea, yes. I reckon a man of your complexion probably doesn't get on with beaches very well, or sunshine. But they do have ice cream, so, there's that. Nicest beach. Yeah, ice cream's nice. Nicest beach. Not Great Yarmouth. I just tend to think of Norfolk beaches because they're all just so lovely. But there was like a beach that I went to in Florida where like the sand was essentially just crushed up little bits of shell instead of like our normal gritty, muddy sand. So that was quite nice. But yes, enough talking about the beach. We will see if the rest of Norwich City squad is going to be on the beach in this remaining game. Don't worry, one game left and then it'll all be over, and then we have a long summer of wondering who we're going to sign, overthinking pre-season, and worrying who our next manager is going to be. And you know what? I can't wait. This has been episode 41 of the MyFootballWriter podcast. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, subscribe and like and comment and all those wonderful, fantastical things. And we will see you for the next podcast whenever it comes out.